they make the top four, boy, I would eat my chair. And I would eat my chair with a knife and fork. I wouldn't even cook it. That is, I couldn't see, nah. Welcome to Chatterbox. My name is P, and today I have a special guest. And before you start to wonder where I got this person from, I did not go out and hire an Indian. This is my brother, RV. Hi, RV.
How's it going, P? Everything good?
Yeah. We are always talking about sports. We're both Manchester United fans. And I said, let's jump online and talk about the big event that is about to start next week on the 9th of April, the IPL. Now, the IPL is about to start, and these are the questions that have already started crossing my mind. Who is going to be top at the end of the season? Who's going to be bottom? Was Chris Morris worth 6.25 crore? Did DC mix up the Corran brothers? Were they thinking about Sam when they actually spent 5.25 crore on Tom? Without Jofra Archer, should RR bother turning up? And will Marco Jansen prove his worth to Mumbai Indians? We've been hearing about this guy for a while. Is he the new big talent out there? So my question, RV, you've looked at the teams, you've scouted the players. In order from top to bottom, what positions would you say each team is going to be at? Give us your perspective.
It's a tough one, P. I mean, I think I've always been someone who doesn't like to sit on the fence. So I would say that I'll be able to give you a definitive top 2 or 3 and a definitive bottom 2 or 3, maybe. But the middle is where the question mark is for me. I think the middle order, a bit like some of the teams in terms of in the auction, who they were trying to sign. I think there's going to be a lot of question marks about the middle order, filling in gaps, and that's what we're going to see at the table before we reach the final 4. I think some of the teams in the middle are undecided yet, and it just depends on maybe some of the coaching, maybe some of the picks on certain players, and gambling on some of the youngsters maybe, and rotation and things like that.
So if I had to push you on it, and I'm going to push you on it, who do you think is going to be top?
It's very difficult to look past the Mumbai Indians, isn't it? They're so strong. They won their 5th IPL title last year. The captaincy of Rohit Sharma was instrumental in that, and they've just gone from strength to strength again this year. Again with the auction, it looks like they've made some shrewd purchases, and it looks as though, to be honest, they don't really have any close challengers. They're my top pick in terms of the favourites. I think they're overwhelming favourites for a lot of people, and rightly so.
Well, they got a good opening lineup. Basically, their opening lineup can destroy most teams. Sometimes batsman number 4 starts to wonder, is he even going to bat sometimes? Because the opening pair will just destroy everything that's going on. But what about the Sunrisers? They've got a decent team.
The Sunrisers are interesting. I mean, I think they're one of those teams where you never know what you're going to get quite. But one thing's for sure, David Warner, he is going to be the main man again. I mean, obviously you've got Kane Williamson, one of the strongest hitters in world cricket, in my opinion. I think he's taken over the mantle from AB de Villiers as one of those players in the last few years who you just absolutely love to watch. He is all action. He's always entertaining, Kane Williamson. And I think that combination between him and Warner, I mean, Johnny Bairstow's in there as well. Obviously, we can't forget the Englishman, but I think Warner and Williamson is a combination that will be irresistible for Sunrisers and their dreams and their ambitions for this year.
Okay, so would you say that Sunrisers were number 2 for you?
I wouldn't actually. I have a gut feeling for the Delhi Capitals this year, and I think they're going to be the closest challengers for Mumbai Indians. And I'm not quite sure why, but there just seems to be a slow, consistent improvement each year with the Delhi Capitals. And I think if you look back across the last maybe 4 or 5 years in the IPL, they've kind of just crept up there without being amazing. But they've put together a strong squad. And I think that that's something that we need to remember as viewers and fans of the IPL. The squad really is crucial. It's not just about the 11. And unfortunately, some of the weaker teams, I think that's where they're going to come unstuck. They have a good first 11 on paper, but beyond that, there's not much depth. And then with the amount of matches that you have in the IPL, I think that's going to tell at the latter stages for some of these teams.
All right. So we got the Mumbai Indians number 1 for you. You said the Delhi Capital number 2. Who would you say is number 3?
Number 3, I would say, is Sunrisers.
Okay. Number 4?
Number 4 is an interesting one. Again, I don't want to sound as though I'm going to be too disrespectful to some teams here, but I think number 4 is going to happen by default because of the lower positions, if you know what I mean. So rather than give you number 4, I'm going to give you the lowest placed teams, if that's okay. And then by default, you'll see who ends up 4th, if that makes sense. So right at the bottom of the pile for me, I'm going to go with Rajasthan Royals.
Okay. But
it's an interesting one.
All that money on Morris.
I know. I mean, they can spend all the money in the world, but actually, is one all-rounder going to make the big difference for them? And for me, I don't see that it will. I mean, they put all their eggs in one basket there. And the problem with Rajasthan Royals is if you look down the pecking order, they're just not that good. In the middle of the order, even their openers are questionable, in my opinion. I just think there's something about Rajasthan that it doesn't sit right. I don't know what you think about their bowlers either. I mean, a lot of their players are quite old. I mean, they're not quite Chennai Super Kings old, but they're old.
They got Ben Stokes.
They have Ben Stokes. I mean, they got more than Ben Stokes. Maybe I'm being a bit too unfair with Rajasthan, but there's something about them since they won the inaugural IPL. Let's not forget, and since that time, I think it was Shane Warne, if I'm not mistaken, that kind of led them at that time. But since then, they just have not looked like a coherent side. They have not looked like a franchise that's going anywhere. I don't know if you agree, but it just seems like they're sort of floundering along. They're sort of staying in the mix here and there, but they're not pushing the top sides. And they've kind of done what Chennai Super Kings have done in the last few years, which is just sort of in the auction, just either have a gamble on a big player or stick with what you've got. And then they've ended up with a squad that doesn't look like they're going to threaten anything, in my opinion. I mean, that is obviously just my opinion. But
in all honesty, I would never usually watch their games if it wasn't for Jofra Archer. And now that he's injured, I'm just like, I highly doubt that I'll watch many of their games. I might tune in if they're playing against the team that I am going to follow for this season. And let me kind of put it out there. The team that I'm going to go for is Chennai Super Kings. At the moment, I'm watching MS Dhoni's movie, and somehow he's inspired me. So this season, I'm going to support him. And also after seeing Sam Curran's performance, a recent one-day game where he was destroying Indian bowling, I'm just like, I have a sneaky feeling they could surprise us. So what would you?
I mean, there is a glimmer of hope for CSK in that they do have some of the mainstays of IPL history. You mentioned MS Dhoni, and he's an absolute hero, revered all around India. That's not going to change, even with 2 or 3 bad years towards the end of his career. He's in the winter of his career, let's say, and I you can't blame him at his age, or with his stature in the game. No one's going to have a dig at him now, especially what he's done for India, not just in ODIs.
You think he's on the decline?
I mean, it's not my opinion. I think it's just widely accepted, to be fair. We love MS Dhoni, but I think he's in that period that Yuvraj Singh was a couple of years ago, where he was kind of hanging around still, but he's about to drop off. And I think that's where we are with MS Dhoni. Sad to say, what a player. All the memories and entertainment he's given the Indian fans over the years. But I think we are at that stage with MS Dhoni. I mean, they do have, let's not ignore some of the other players. They've got Faf du Plessis. Obviously, he's a strong bat. Let's not forget. They have the likes of Robin Uthappa, who historically, if this was 2014, I mean, that's a very good strong batsman as well. But you never know. Some of these players can have a bit of an Indian summer, and they can have a bit of a resurgence depending on how they're feeling. It's not always about form, as we've seen in the past. It's not always about what they're doing in domestic cricket as they come into the IPL. It can be like a cup competition, like the FA Cup. It can be a giant killing sometimes, to give you a football reference. But they have got other players. Suresh Raina, my favorite player in IPL history. What a fielder, what a batsman. He's coming to that age now where he can't impact the team as much. And I think he's suffering a bit like MS Dhoni and some of the other guys where they're not playing cricket regularly for country nor their county sides or domestic sides. And it's getting to the stage with Suresh Raina where the CSK are really hoping that he pulls out the big guns just from what he has in his armory rather than anything else.
One of the questions I should actually ask you is, which 3 or 4 players are you looking forward to seeing this season? And I've noticed we haven't mentioned Kohli at all so far. So I'd like to hear your view on that.
It's an interesting one with Virat Kohli and with his team in general. I think RCB have been the most underwhelming side in IPL history. And I say that because they have phenomenal players. If I take it back a few years, when they had Chris Gale, they had Virat Kohli, they had AB de Villiers, the latter two are still there, of course. And they just had a side that was so entertaining to watch. Even their bowling attack was something to be feared if you stretch it back a few years. But they just never quite held it together. And I've heard some critics comment on Virat Kohli's captaincy and his leadership in the IPL format, and asking questions whether the players trust him as much as his compatriots do with the national side. Maybe there's question marks around Virat in that area, but I think the main problem that they have is they don't have balance. They're sometimes top heavy, and they're sometimes can hit a good run rate at the start of the match in the first 5 to 6 overs, and they just kind of simmer out and tail off, and it doesn't quite happen for them in games. And there are much better teams this year in particular, and I don't see RCB threatening, unfortunately.
Well, let me tell you who my top selection is. I think Mumbai Indians will win again. I think Sunrisers will come second. Mm-hmm. I think CSK will come third. And
wow.
The team that I'm rooting for this season, but I would love for them to actually win. Yeah. I think DC is going to come fourth. I think Punjab Kings will come fifth. RCB as sixth. KK Riders as seventh. RR as eighth. And that is purely because no other teams are in the league, because I'd have put them ahead of RR, because I think RR is a pile of rubbish at the moment.
So we're both agreed then on the top place and the bottom place. That's interesting. But I think I know you said you were supporting CSK this year, and I understand it. There's a bit of nostalgia with them for me as well. I don't really have allegiance to one particular team, but I was supporting CSK earlier on in the IPL in the early years. We're going back 13, 14 years now. Yeah. But yeah, I was a bit of a supporter of CSK back in the day. As I mentioned, Suresh Raina was my favorite player of the history of IPL. Still is my favorite player of the history of IPL. So there isn't really much allegiance to them because they're just such a disappointment. But I guess Manchester United are the same at this current point in time.
It could be worse. We could be looking at the RR version of the Premier League, which is awesome. So it could be worse.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there are a couple of things in there which I found quite interesting. What you said, I think Punjab, for me, I think they're going to finish in the top four. I think.
Really?
I know I said by default. You would hear from me who I think would finish fourth, and I think. The bottom three, aside from RR, in my opinion, sorry to say, KKR and Shah Rukh Khan, not the cricketer Shah Rukh Khan, by the way. I'm talking about the actor Shah Rukh Khan. We do have a young Shah Rukh Khan who's going to be one of the players to watch in the IPL this year, by the way. He is playing for the Punjab Kings, and he was bought for 5.2 crore, P. That's quite a bit for a young player. I mean, I say young, he's not that young, but he's quite new to the franchise. He's quite new to IPL. He's an all-rounder. He's a hard hitter. He's one that, I mean, Punjab Kings have a couple of these youngsters that I'm really looking forward to watching. There's another one called Ravi Bishnoi. He's a leg spinner. He's a very economical spinner. I just think sometimes, a bit like Amit Mishra was a few years ago, he can just come up and be one of the highest wicket takers, and he will just sort of by surprise. You know, you wouldn't expect him to be wearing the purple cap come the end of the tournament. But Amit Mishra was similar in that way, and I just think if they play him Punjab regularly, I think Ravi Bishnoi could be one of those players as well. So there's a couple. I mean, I've got a couple of names I can throw at you besides those two youngsters that I think are really worth watching.
Are you looking forward to seeing Chris Gale? He's the universe boss, man. Or do you think he's going to come to an end? Because
to be honest, I mean, I've always loved watching Chris Gale. He's my favorite West Indian cricketer of all time. Sorry, Brian Lara, but he for me is over the hill just a bit, and I would prefer to see some of the youngsters come in. Sorry, Chris, you are a legend, but for me, I think it's time for some of the youngsters played more of a role. And obviously, I would like to see Chris Gale, but maybe in lesser games.
He's the greatest West Indian at this short form of cricket. Well, because obviously most of the legends were before this time. Yeah. But at the moment, I wouldn't say he's the greatest he's not the best West Indian in the IPL at the moment. I would say that would go to more, what would I say, Kieran Pollard at the moment in IPL. So, yeah,
Kieran Pollard is a phenomenal talent with the bat and the ball. He's one of those all-rounders that you're not quite sure what you're going to get, but when he turns it on, boy,
he can single-handedly win a game. So
yeah, what a player! I just wouldn't want to be a bowler having to bowl to him, and I wouldn't. At the same time, I also wouldn't want to be a batsman having to face his attack either. Yeah. So yeah, he's without doubt he's a strong player. Mumbai Indians have got a massive asset, a weapon, if you want to call him that, in their armory, and I think he's one of the reasons for sure why Mumbai Indians I think are going to be sailing through some of these teams in this tournament.
So my question, not to cut you off, is like, all right, the first 3 games of the season are Mumbai Indians versus RCB. Who do you think is going to win?
I can only see one winner. Mumbai Indians are going to sail that one, in my opinion. RCB, as I said, they have their issues. And I think sometimes it takes Virat Kohli a bit of time to get into the tournament. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I think his team kind of follows suit.
What about CSK versus DC?
Again, I don't think it's a tough one. I would like to see CSK do well overall. I have a bit of a soft spot for them. Like I said, I don't quite have an allegiance to them, but I can only see one winner again. I think DC are going to absolutely hammer CSK. Unfortunately, I can only see that going one way. DC are a very, very strong side, in my opinion.
I have to totally disagree with you. I actually think CSK is actually going to win this one. I think you're going to be surprised. I don't think you should ever write off Dhoni's team. I think not only will they win, but I think they'll win by a margin. So that is something we would definitely talk about. By the way, fans, subscribers, as you can see, RV thinks DC is actually going to win on Saturday. I actually go in for CSK. Who do you agree with? Do you agree with RV? Do you agree with me? Obviously, I know who you should agree with. So we're going to have a little gentleman's bet, and we're thinking of live streaming our reactions to this game to see what is going to happen and talk about our thoughts throughout the game. Is this something you would like to see? Let us know, okay, in the comments. Now, what about the RSH versus KKR? Who do you think will win?
That's Sunrisers Hyderabad for me. KKR, I think they're going to be propping up the leaderboard quite a bit this tournament, unfortunately. I don't see much hope for their squad. Never mind their first 11. I don't see much to give them much throughout the tournament. And I just think Sunrisers, we've talked about a couple of their players already. I think they're just going to have far too much. We haven't even mentioned the likes of Jason Holder, Bhuvaneshwar Kumar. These players are also Sunrisers Hyderabad. And if you just look at KKR, for me, Shubman Gill is going to need to turn into Shah Rukh Khan and be a hero in this game. Because
Morgan.
And
Narayan was a legend a few years ago. He was.
Well, is this 2016, P? Let's. I know we like taking it back a little bit.
I didn't even know Pat Cummins was still playing. I thought he was done.
And I mean, Andre Russell, he's always flattered to deceive, in my opinion. He always seems to get signed for big bucks. As a West Indian man yourself, what would you comment on Andre Russell?
I've always thought every season, I always think he's about to do something legendary. I always think he's about to take the next step. I always think that, you know what, he's going to put Kieran Pollard in the rear view and show that he's West Indian in the IPL. And then by the end of the season, either he picks up some form of injury or he just flatters to deceive. Somewhere along the season, you're going to see him hobbling off the pitch. You're going to go, oh, that's a sad sight to see. But hey, this could be a season. I doubt it, but this could be a season. But
like I said,
CSK for me is CSK, and I'm going to stick to it.
There's a couple more points on Kolkata Knight Riders just to give some of the viewers some hope there. If you're a supporter of Kolkata, I mean, yes, they do have older players and established players: Dinesh Karthik, Sunil Narayan, Owen Morgan, but they're not all doom and gloom. There is the likes of Pat Cummins there, who is obviously an exceptional talent, and we don't want to write them off totally. Are your feelings about Pat Cummins different today?
The thing about it, he's okay. He's not somebody that I would say that would, when I see him, he strikes the fear. I don't think he would be on any list that will strike the fear in any opposition. He's he's a good player. He's not.
Yeah.
Wow, we need to watch out for him.
I hear what you're saying with Pat Cummins. I mean, I was just trying to give a glimmer of hope to the Kolkata fans. I mean, maybe, in my opinion, I think KKR need to do something radically different. And I think rather than playing some of the older, more experienced players, they have got some other guys. I mean, they spent relatively big on Shakib Al Hassan, the Bangladeshi. He's an all-rounder. He can hit the ball. He can take wickets. I think they've spent big on him. They need to try and get him in. I think some people predict that he won't make their first 11. For me, I think he should be thrown in. They've got Kuldeep Yadav, who is a decent spinner. I think some Indians will be very familiar with him, obviously. And they have another overseas player in Ben Cutting, who is another all-rounder. And I think they need to be using their squad a bit more. Like I was alluding to earlier on, some of these teams that rely on just an 11 are not going to do well. And I think KKR, one of their biggest ways they could be smart here is to utilize the squad a bit more. They also have Sandeep Warrior and Lockie Ferguson, who is a pacey bowler as well. I think they do need to mix it up a bit. And they don't necessarily have to play all of the usual Nitesh Rana, Rahul Tripathi, Owen Morgan, Dinesh Karthik, Sunil Narayan. They don't need to play all of them. Andre Russell. I think if they mix it up a little bit, you're going to get a better balance, and I think that's going to be a key for them in making the last four. I don't think they will, but I think that will be key if they do aspire to reach the last four. Mix it up, throw in some of the youngsters. You don't need to play all of the overseas players just because you've spent big on them.
You know what? Sometimes I watch the IPL and it feels a lot like Formula One. It's like, you know, the teams that are going to win or do and perform well. And then there's a whole bunch of teams that are just there to make up the numbers and potentially get into crashes along the way. So there's some teams like, and I keep saying RR, that are there to make up the numbers. They make the top four. Boy, I would eat my chair. And I would eat my chair with a knife and fork. I wouldn't even. That is. I couldn't see. Nah.
So to be honest, P, I think we're agreed on the standings, apart from CSK, which you have allegiance to. Yeah. For me, CSK will be third bottom, but I think you've predicted them finishing above DC, which is for me amazing. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see in that game. And
Hey, you know what? So, subscribers, as I said before, if you're interested in actually seeing us do a watch along to kind of see who is actually going to come on top, I'm usually never wrong. So that will be a surprise for me that I could predict something so far off. As you can see, our view will be incorrect, but let's wait and see.
let's give them a bit of a teaser. I mean, I want to hear from you, P. Give me 3 reasons why Chennai Super Kings are going to beat Delhi. Why? What do they have?
My 3 reasons, I'm just going to name 3 players I think that are just going to turn it on. I think Dhoni will just roll back the years because he's always a legend and he'll always be a legend. I think Sam Curran has finally come into his own, and I'm a big fan of Jadeja. I just think he's fantastic. So I think those 3 are going to be pivotal in kind of destroying DC. As much as I think DC have a decent squad, and don't get me wrong, there's quite a few players that I love in that team. I love Rabada, and who else would I say? I'm also a big fan of. I'm a big fan of Sharma, but apart from that, nah.
Apart from Rabada and Sharma, is that it? You'd say?
I'd say in that team, those are the only two I'm a big fan of.
Ravichandran Ashwin will come back to haunt Chennai Super Kings.
Nah.
Ashwin is one of the leading wicket takers.
No, CSK had a bad season last year, and I can understand, but that's just one season. Everyone has a bad off season, but you'll see. You'll see.
For my 3, just to make it fair, and just to give the viewers some clarity on why Delhi Capitals will definitely beat Chennai Super Kings, even though they don't have Shreyas Iyer, who was the captain, who was going to give them that balance in the middle order and to keep the innings going. They do have now Rishabh Pant, who for me, I'm going to make a bold prediction here, he's going to be the player of the tournament. I think Rishabh Pant is in hot form for India. And this guy is serious. For me, Rishabh Pant is going to take it in this IPL 2021. He is going to be the player to watch in the tournament. And I think he's going to lead the Delhi Capitals to push MI closest, in my opinion. That's my first reason why I think Delhi Capitals will be beating CSK in one of the early games. And for me, second reason, I know you have Shikhar Dhawan and Prithvi Shaw. Prithvi Shaw, I think he's a top talent, but he hasn't, as an opener so far, delivered what some of the fans were expecting of him when he played last year. But I think there's a lot more to come from him. Ajinkya Rahane, he's a very, very composed customer. And I think you're going to see that he's going to really steady the ship in absence of Shreyas Iyer. You're going to see Ajinkya Rahane take that mantle on and really be that guy for Delhi Capitals to, once they've lost a few wickets, he's going to be the guy towards the death that is going to steady things for them.
Today, I'm going to be a man of few words. Next week, I'm going to be a man of a lot of words when I'm going to say, I told you so. Because that's what I usually say to the rest of the crew, the Chatterbox crew. I told you so. I told them when the trailer is terrible and they doubt me because I have that insight. But you know what? I told you so. So subscribers, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. And guess what? I told you so. Bye for now.